We chose the boomerang as our artifact. The reason we chose the boomerang is because it represents many important aspects of the Indigenous culture. One important aspect is the symbols on the boomerang and how they represent tradition. A boomerang is also used for storytelling and music. An artifact is an object which holds a cultural or historical significance and is man-made. The boomerang constitutes as an artifact as it is man-made and an historical object. It holds great cultural value to Indigenous Australians, but also the history involved. To start the lesson off, we need to discuss the topic, which is Indigenous Studies, focusing on boomerangs, the subject, which is history, the duration, which is 50 minutes, and the year level, which is Year 5. We also need to discuss the learning purpose, the success criteria, and the rationale. The learning purpose for this lesson is to learn about boomerangs and the history behind it, to use different symbols for when the students decorate their own boomerangs and to understand the meaning behind the symbols. The success criteria for the lesson is the knowledge and understanding the students will gain about Indigenous history and culture, and to teach them about the significance of boomerangs. The rationale for this lesson is to develop students' curiosity and expand on their awareness of historical knowledge. It is about creating their understanding of the history which occurred in the past, but also the present and future history.
The hook. To introduce students to the activity of creating their own unique boomerangs, we will show them a silly animation of a boomerang being thrown. This will hook students in because it is a short, 20-second clip that they will find humorous. After the clip, we will show the students our artifact, and the students' prior knowledge of the artifact will be tested by asking them a number of different questions about boomerangs and the symbols marked on our artifact. Then we will introduce a few of the traditional symbols that Aboriginals use when painting and decorating boomerangs. Class, how these symbols were used to tell a story. The class activity. The students will then be given a copy of the Aboriginal symbols and an A4 piece of paper with the outline of a boomerang, which they can decorate and colour however they choose to. The boomerang they decorate must include 2 of the symbols that are featured on the Aboriginal symbols handout. The purpose of this activity is to hook students into a brief introduction of the culture of Aboriginal people and to promote curiosity and interest into learning more about it. The activity sparks curiosity as students will become interested in understanding and interpreting traditional Aboriginal art and the stories in which they tell. Engagement. This activity will be engaging for students as it gives them the opportunity to use their creative thinking to tell a story in the decoration of their boomerangs. They will also have to think deeply about how they use the symbols they have chosen to tell their story. Students will also find this activity engaging because they will get to be creative and artistic with how they decorate their boomerangs.
How our artefact connects with the Victorian curriculum. Our artefact of the boomerang directly comes under the history section of the Victorian curriculum. Our artefact and the activity we have associated with it crosses over with the English, visual arts, Victorian Aboriginal languages, and intercultural capability section of the Victorian curriculum. Our artefact comes under history because during our lesson, which focuses on the Aboriginal boomerang, we will explore the Aboriginal history surrounding it and the significance that the boomerang and its artwork has on the Aboriginal people. This learning comes under VCHHK092, VCHHK089, VCHHC085, and VCHHK094 sections of the curriculum. These sections explore the rights of Aboriginal people and the role that significant groups had on shaping and changing a colony. They also cover the continuity and change in the life of Aboriginal people. The activity that we have set for our class is to decorate their own boomerang made of paper using traditional Aboriginal symbols. The symbols that students will use to decorate their boomerang are used as communication techniques by Aboriginal people. Students developing knowledge about these symbols and applying them in their own artwork comes under VCELA 334, VCAVAR 032, and VCAVAE 029. These sections of the curriculum are English and Visual Arts. Throughout the lesson and by the end of the lesson, students will be reflecting on the differences between their own culture and the Aboriginal culture they explored in class. This comes under the Intercultural Capability section, VCICCB 009 and VCICCD 012.
It is always important that at the end of a class you bring the students back to the centre of their room or bring their attention back to a whole class setting to discuss what they have learnt during completing their activity and during the class session. It is important that when you're running the conclusion of a lesson plan that you don't just ask the students if there are any questions and leave it at that. You as a teacher need to bring up any areas of confusion that you may have observed when monitoring the students completing their activity. It is also important that you reinforce the most important point made through the lesson so that the learning is solidified for future classes. This is a good time to bring up the prompt questions that were given to the students at the beginning of the class. For our artefact, the boomerang, we asked students questions like if they knew what the boomerang was used for, what the boomerang was made of, and what the designs on the boomerang symbolise. This allows for the students to start thinking about their learning, that they don't just complete their activity and forget about it. This also is a great time to get students to share their work. For our artefact, we would get students to stand up and discuss the symbols that they put on their boomerang and to explain the story that they're trying to tell through the symbols that they've used. This gives students a sense of accomplishment and a reason for them to be proud of their work. Conducting this lesson to a Year 5 class will also act as a stepping stone into future studies on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. The Victorian curriculum states that as students progress to year levels such as 6, 7 and 8, that they learn more about Indigenous culture and Australian Indigenous history. For example, in Year 7, one of the curriculum requirements is that students gain knowledge on the significant beliefs, values and practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. This directly links to the activity that we conducted on the boomerang, how the students were taught about the symbols on the boomerang and how that connects to the Aboriginal culture and practices. Therefore, when they enter a topic like this in the later years, they are somewhat prepared and not just thrown in the deep end with no idea what is going on. The prompt questions being answered at the beginning as well as the end of the class is a non-formative way of assessing what the students have learnt. If the answers change and seem to be more knowledgeable, then you can generally come to the conclusion that they have learnt something during the class session. If they are still a bit unsure of the answers, then you know that they may need more support in that area and that during the class session they may not have learnt as much as you would have hoped. There will be no formative assessment for a task like this. It would come more from teacher observation during the activity and assessing through your own personal opinion if the students have gained any knowledge by completing the task. This would look something along the lines of the teacher talking to the students while they're doing the activity, asking them about the topic, getting their opinion on ideas, and even just blatantly asking them what they had learnt during the activity.